those to take out.
That's the thing, council.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church. We're glad you joined us for worship today. Whoever you are, whatever your theological, spiritual, political, sexual, racial orientation, or gender identity, you're welcome to worship here and become a part of this community. Do we have any announcements? Julie?
Just a reminder that we rescheduled what was supposed to be yesterday's coffee house for June 11th. So if anybody would like to volunteer that night, you couldn't yesterday, we are happy to have your help.
Is that the same day?
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, with now that we're back in a high level, we want to try to give it a little bit of time to hopefully come back down. And if we're still on the high level, we may fall back to the fall. All right. Any other announcements? Yeah.
The online plant sale was going pretty good yesterday for a few hours.
They wanted.
And then, we had problems, or technical difficulties. So that's going to be, so they sold a lot of plants, and then the rest of it, we're gonna set up another day to sell off the rest. So stay tuned.
All right. Any more announcements? All right. With that, we'll start with our reading this morning. It's number. Yeah, 434, right? Yeah. So number 434, very hymnal. All right. We called them audible this morning. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. And I will now welcome up to the pulpit our guest once again, Reverend Dr. Judy Campbell.
The cough is allergies. If anyone is uncomfortable with me unmasking and putting my hearing aid back in Please raise your hand, I'll take care of it. Mercury is in retrograde, and that's what I blame everything on this morning. This is from, remember, last time I was here, I read a lot of things from this one in Universal, and this is a collection of prayers and meditations and reflections from Unitarians all over the world. And I think it's important to remind us all that we are not just the people sitting in this room. We are connected to something so much bigger, and a way of thinking that is so much bigger than this wonderful place, but we are part of a larger world. This is from Denmark. We believe that the mountains and valleys, the sorrows and joys of life cannot be defined to formulae or dogma. How true is that? That humankind is a mystery, open and questioning. We have no short answers to the basic questions of life, but we have faith in the existence of a universal God power, which can be envisioned in many different ways. And we assume that all religions spring from this same source. Let us pray and work for the day when we may all live in harmony with our environment, that we and all humanity may learn to live in peace, and that we may nourish and develop our understanding of both our neighbors and ourselves. Both go hand in hand. Maybe so. And COVID has changed what we're going to do for greeting our neighbors today, but I'd love you to stand and turn around and make eye contact with each other and wave or do something welcoming and loving. And I will bless that because Rick, who forgets nothing, remember that yours truly loves bubbles.
Ooh.
When I was ordained in the Norwell Church, when the whole ceremony was finished, and I walked back down the center aisle as a minister, I had the choir loft behind, raining bubbles. It was my choice.
So please stand for the, as you're willing and able, for the lighting of the chalice, and I believe you have some words.
We light this chalice to remind ourselves of that flame which burns in each of our hearts, remembering that when flame meets flame, match meets candle, the two become one, belonging to each other. Many flames join together to form the warmth of community, of congregation, of city, and of nation. We gather here to remind ourselves of our inner lights and join with others to light the way to a good world community. But before we can shine a light on that path, we must remind ourselves of who we are. Does this sound familiar from what I just read? And we must know who we are. We are Unitarians and Universalists. We are friends, we are visitors, we are seekers. We are diverse, and we are united. Let us come together to worship. Blessed be you.
Please recite with me the words found in the order of service. Kindling this flame of our liberal heritage and our chalice of community, let us open to the presence of the sacred. And now the affirmation, please. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine, us to be covenant with each other and with God. Now please join us in the overlooking hymn, number 345, with joy reclaiming the growing light.
My mask on, and I'd like the kids to come up. I have something in the mystery curiosity basket for us to look at. Can you understand me if I speak to this? Is it okay? More or less? Less? What? You know what we can do? You and I sit here. And I'm gonna go way over here. Something for you to hold up. Something for you to hold up. And something for you to hold up. And something for you to hold up. Oh, and we have enough for you to hold down. And something for you to hold up. We don't want to leave you up there. Okay, now I'll move over here. Would you, can you hear me now? Put my preacher voice on. Would you hold up what you have? Hold that up and wave it at everybody. What does this make you think about? Say it. COVID. Are we really sick and tired of seeing this all again? Are you sick and tired of seeing it all again?
Yes.
Yes. Well, let me tell you a story. I learned some things during all of this. And sometimes everything isn't all bad. One of the things, Rick, would you hold up your mask?
This is the fancy one.
I learned that even though masks are a pain and an aggravation, they keep your face really warm in the wintertime. Did anybody notice that?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're great for allergies.
They're great for allergies, and I suffer from asthma, and boy, cold air just, and I learned from this that in the wintertime, I'm gonna wear one of these masks all the time. So that's something I learned, even though I wish I'd learned it a different way, but it hadn't been so powerful, I might not have learned it. In church, we learn to do something very different. And this is for all of you. What did we do? The clue is the computer back there. What did we learn about church that we could do differently that we never thought we could do? Begins with Z. Zoom. Zoom.
Zoom.
Yeah. Say it.
Zoom. Zoom. Zoom.
We learned how to Zoom. I learned how to Zoom. I learned how to preach to a camera. And I didn't die. And I could do it. So we have made church available to a lot more people. Because some people can't get out in cold weather. Some people are mobility challenged. Some people are immuno-challenged. And we made this available. We made meetings available, didn't we? We could go to a meeting on Zoom. I've been teaching on Zoom. It's great. It's absolutely great. So, some good things come out of what we think is awful. Like, now this is for the kids. Is a rainy day a good day or a bad day? You have fun in rain, you can't go out. Bad, right? But what if you're a plant? Then it's a good day, isn't it? If you're a plant, it's a good day. Yeah. Some of us complain about April snowstorms, but my mother used to say, poor man's fertilizer. Because it would sit on the ground and melt slowly into the earth. So sometimes things happen and we have to work at it, but we can learn something from it too if we're open to learning from something. Some of us have minds that are like closed, locked doors. If it's new, I hate it, I'm going to talk to the people. Well, I've got some things. I have one on now. I got all excited. I have my Black Lives Matter band on too. I got excited because I said, I can decorate this and make it look like anything I want. And I'm going to give you all the money so you can do it. And I was so happy. And a couple of days later, it looked like this. All of the colors faded. And part of me wanted to say, that's a stinky old bracelet. Where did I get that dumb idea from? But what can I do if it's all glitter again? I could do it again. I can make it say something else. So, here's one for you, and one to make for somebody you like. And here's one for you, and one to make for somebody you like, and your time has come. And let me give one to baby cakes here. Do you need magic markers? Because I brought them. No. You have to. Okay. I'll collect my COVID things. And just so you folks aren't too disappointed, I have some for you too.
Yay!
I like that. Okay. You can go out or you can stay. That's up to you. You have something to play with, so it won't hurt you. And if you want to stay here, then I would like to have you. But if you get your key, then you can walk a little walk. Okay, go for a little walk and then come back. That might be the best.
Oh, this is zooming. Oh, candle.
If it is language that makes us human, one half of language is to listen. Silence can exist without speech, but speech cannot live without silence. Listen to the speech of others, listen even more to their silence. We now have the opportunity to share our joys and concerns with one another. I'll start. So the candle concern is cases are ticking back up. And hopefully we have enough protection and know what to do this time to keep it from getting out of control.
A candle of joy for my brother JB and his wife Genevieve, who celebrated their 1-year wedding anniversary
Jude?
A simple joy of the wisteria being a little bit more under control.
Everything has its time and place, maybe not on our plans. How bad you? I'm still learning how to do candles.
It's okay. When you, before this one. I want to light a candle of heartbreak for Ukraine. Another one for the people in Buffalo. And another one in sorrow for the hate that drives some people. And if we can do anything with ourselves, we may not be able to save the Ukrainian soldier, but a simple kindness goes a long way, and it models kindness, not viciousness. Even when we disagree with somebody, even when we are poles apart in our thinking, we're still human beings. Even though sometimes I really don't want to admit the thing.
I want a candle for my friend Vic, who passed away yesterday.
Oh,
And another one for her family.
I'm sorry.
A candle of joy. I screwed up my Cobra coverage when I started the coding boot camp and had ended up running out of certain medications. And I was able to work it out and get fully stocked again. And so, things are back to normal.
We'll light one more for all the joys and concerns that we hold within our hearts.
May we join together in silence, in care, in concern, and compassion. Be silent. Make your mind calm and maintain it unruffled. You are the handiwork of Mother Earth. Consider your contribution for the betterment of humanity. As you came out of your mother's womb, you commenced to inhale the air from the atmosphere. You learned to produce sounds. You learned from the gentle breeze, the rain, and those sounds uttered by birds and animals. From the words spoken by your parents. You learned to speak. You were nourished on your mother's milk, which had its origin in the fertility sucked from the produce of the earth. And so the love we confer upon earth springs from our deep affection to our mother. Human life is the product of divine creation. Divinity is the blend of truth and justice. And yes, service is our prayer. May you say.
Please join us in hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. We're at a 10th faith from Coach Maddie from see what happens. The purpose of church is to encourage all who gather here to grow more generous in spirit and in action. Right? This is the end of all world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its many ministries. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. Thank you. Oh, wait, no. Please stand as you're willing and able for the dedication of the gifts. The road not taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Robert Cross. Oops. Oh, I cut the shoe. Oh, thank you. Cinderella.
all-purpose minister. I want to give you folks, I'm stepping away from the script for a second. Having children in here is so wonderful. And I won't name the congregation because that's not very nice. But every minister, when they come to serve the congregation, is told, grow the budget, grow the children, bring in young families. It's universal. I was doing all of that in one of our churches, and we were getting quite a collection of kids. So I thought, now, maybe if we have an intergen service once a month, because they went to their religious education, that was fine, but I wanted them in church, and because that's important. All the people who paid money to have me there and to have me grow the congregation and bring in new families would not come on the day when the kids were running all over the place. How do you spell hypocrisy? You don't know. You didn't hear any of you hear me say that. What I am saying is, in that same church, a woman was doing a reading. She was nursing a baby. She did her reading, nursing the child. We celebrated that. That's the way it ought to be. So, negotiating a new normal, making our way, stumbling along the road less traveled. Masks on, masks off, masks optional. Zoom church, hybrid church, distant praying. No praying at all. 3 feet, 6 feet. No shoes, no service. Sing, don't sing. Hug, elbow, bump, or step back and turn away. We allowed Roe versus Wade. Be very afraid. Be very afraid. Believe me, I am, and it's not just COVID. But that, dear ones, is a different sermon. We are all, and I mean all, grieving what we have lost to all of this. How many times have we heard someone say or said it ourselves, I just want to get back to normal, the way it was before. Before what? Pick one. COVID. Before computers. That changed everything. Cell phones. We hated them, now we cannot leave the door without them, as I did this morning, and therefore missed the church on the way here. Email, telephones, penicillin, voting cards, Zoom calls, and telemedicine, birth control. We all know that change is inevitable, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it, and most of us hate it. And yet, if change is inevitable and it keeps happening, why on earth haven't we adapted to it by now? I like to think that we of all people, Unitarian Universalists, would be on top of this, right? The original change makers, pot stirrers, torch bearers, questioners of authority, not so much as whether we need to or can trust, say it again, whether we need to or we want to question authority, but simply because we can. A challenge. So why should we let people be bothered if things change? One answer is that any change pushes us out of our comfort zone. And even you use. We like our comfort zones, and this does not make me a bad person. The truth is, hating change is pretty universal. Everybody hates change. Wait a minute. Maybe I should say this in a slightly different way. I should say everybody hates being changed against their will and without their permission. In other words, if the change is my idea and I'm instituting that change, I would think it's a really good idea and everybody should jump on board. But, God forbid, I'm the one being told to change something against my will without due warning or having been asked for my express opinion and input. And after endless committee meetings, I'm going to resist. I will fight back overtly and out loud where everyone can hear me, or I'll do it covertly in secret meetings or mount an email campaign and do everything I can to badmouth the changer in charge. After that, I will fold my arms across my chest, dig in my heels, thrust out my chin, growl, and vote no. On principle, because it's difficult. But what if you can't vote no? Because sometimes you can't. You don't get a choice or even a chance to vote. Change happens. COVID didn't give anyone a chance to vote. A natural disaster, a flood, a tornado, a blizzard, a 7-year drought is not affected by religious or gender identity, by political party or popular opinion, nor is it influenced by financial donations. Weather and earth scientists can explain how these things come about, but no one can prevent them. We don't get a vote. No one wants to hear this, least of all me. But if I can stop fuming long enough to look at both sides of what's happened to all of us, both sides of the altar rail over the last 2 years, I think most of us realize that some of the changes that were thrust upon us or slowly developed out of necessity in our isolation maybe weren't all that bad. And in deeper retrospect, possibly offered new and valuable opportunities. Does this sound familiar? What I just talked about with the kids. Opportunities not so much for change, but for growth. With the world turning upside down the way it is, and at the rate it is, bringing about more change and faster change, I'd like to know that I had something solid I could hang on to as I go forward and make my way along the untraveled road ahead. Did I just say rock solid and unchanging in the same paragraph? As I said, change is ongoing and ever-present, world without end, amen. I didn't. I believe there are some things that do not change. Who we are inside doesn't change. Our allegiance to family, community, to our tribe, to our shared UU values and the balance and stability this gives us, this doesn't change. It can be shaken, badly shaken, but it doesn't change. Our core values don't change. Our shared values and our core beliefs, diverse as they are and articulated in our 7 principles, are what keeps us on track spiritually and emotionally. One way or another, in person or distance, electronically on Zoom, we will continue to come together in religious fellowship to affirm and promote those beliefs and values for ourselves, with and for one another in religious community. Our sense of connection to the greater whole and our personal feeling of strength and power, as reflected in what we hold and uphold as a community, doesn't change if we're wearing a mask or not, or we are Zooming to church and work, or Zooming while listening from home. The good news is that one day we will go back, but not ever to the way it was, but back to something that developed out of our communal needs, perhaps a new and improved, familiar, and maybe a little bit broader and more inclusive comfort zone. And once it becomes established, we'll cling to that new familiar as tightly as we ever did to the last one, trust me. Before I finish this morning, I want to bring in one more thought that might be of help along the road ahead. The road we probably would not have taken unless we were forced to. And this is not a complete gear shift, it only sounds that way. One of the platitudes I most dislike: everything happens for a reason. I don't think so. And I don't think so by a long shot. Things happen. And there are a lot of ways of expressing this thought. Things happen that are totally out of control. And for more than a few, there is no going back to the way it was, ever. And it isn't our fault, it isn't your fault, it isn't my fault. I don't think natural disasters or human tragedies happen because someone or something out there is mad at us and pulling the strings. Pulling the strings in vindication or punishment to teach us, poor floundering, clueless humans, the difference between right and wrong. Good things happen, bad things happen. Some might have been preventable with a little forward thinking and action, climate change for one, nuclear disasters and catastrophic chemical spills for another. I don't believe for a second that such events are intended to teach us a lesson. But, and here's the key thought, I am totally convinced that everything that happens to change our lives in some way, either from within or without, has the power to teach us something. something, it can deepen our understanding of self and other. We started with understanding of self this morning, my first words. And in so doing, light the way forward to a wiser and more compassionate tomorrow, AKA be a streetlight on the road less traveled. From one side of the pulpit, the pandemic is like nothing we clergy ever could have imagined either. Those of us who were technically challenged found ourselves trying to operate in an unfamiliar arena, while homeschooling and fearing for ourselves and our children and our families. And oh, by the way, doing more funerals in a month than we ever thought possible, while wearing a mask that's hard to breathe through and harder to talk through. In some ways, it was a postdoc seminar in emergency relief, our own and our parishioners, each trying to care for the other. And for the most part, we did it. You did it, I did it, doing it again. We're coming through it almost. The peaks and valleys are less dramatic, and we're still here. And what have I and my clerical brothers and sisters learned through all of this? That in-person church is lovely, but many of us saw our numbers grow because of the flexibility of a Zoom service, which allowed so many more to attend when they were able to. I think we clergy grew closer as colleagues as we tried to help one another negotiate the storm, sharing ideas and resources, preaching for each other and listening to each other and ministering to each other. This closeness hopefully will not change, and it will give us the strength and courage and the firm foundation to move forward, to walk together. Some things really don't change. The power of love, the comfort of compassion, the joy and generosity. We gave of these freely to help each other through the dark night, and we still have an untraveled road ahead of us. The ground can shift anytime. I wrote a program, prayer of lament and hope, a couple of years ago at the beginning of the pandemic, and I'd forgotten all about it until a congregant from another church reminded that I had shared it on Facebook. I'd like to offer it to us all now as a way of concluding my message this morning, and the thought that we will take some of this new learning into whatever our new normal will be. The name of the poem prayer is called, "And What Will Be Left?" And what will be left when we are done with this? And what will we do when we are done with this? Will we still be kind? Will we continue to smile and wave at people we don't know? Will we still be our brothers and our sisters' keepers? Will we still make things for people we will never meet? Will we draw hearts and write kind messages on the sidewalk? Will we work more from home? Will we spend more time with our kids and our parents? Will we spend more time with ourselves? We've been given the blessing and the challenge of time. We can cringe and cower and hoard and complain. We can raise our fists and curse the inconvenience, or we can study the lessons that have been laid out in front of us and carry them with us into a brighter and kinder tomorrow. Walking along the untraveled road ahead together. Amen. Thank you. Closing hymn this morning is hymn number 138, "These Things Shall Be." Stand as you are comfortably able, or sit and sing and listen, or just
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We are surrounded by mystery, but not by darkness. Uncertainty, but not defeat. We are surrounded by love for which we may reach out in any time of need and to give again to those who need us, because service is our prayer. Go in peace, my friends. Go in peace. Stay healthy.
And just so you know, coffee hour will be outside. The sun is out and it's nice.
Yes, I will mask up this.
I'm so glad you played Blue Boat